Okay, welcome everyone to Community Governance Oversight meeting number 3. And thank you for being here. Oh, here's Andre. So we do have someone from Treasury. Just let Andre join. Hi, Andre. It's connected to audio. Okay, I'll just do a share screen for the agenda and then we can get going.
And just a brief note that I have to drop off right at 5:45. Sorry about that.
That's okay. See if I've got the right thing. Okay, it might take a while to pop up, but has that come up now?
Still coming. There it is. Yep.
There it is. Okay. Okay. So, as I say, thank you everyone for coming, and I'll just dive straight in. Are there any Treasury updates, Andre? I mean, we might have to come back to some Treasury issues, but if you just give some Treasury updates.
No. I saw there's a lot of new labels on the project board. Ada due, so we might have to sort that out. Are we going to sort that out tomorrow, or in
we
this?
Can discuss it tomorrow because I need to explain to members here what that's about as well. I'm trying to get a system going of as we go through our deliverables to organize a system of how we pay people. That's what that's about. But we'll just go over it. But if there's anything been paid out recently, I don't think there has there?
Just no, not for this group. Not for this group.
Okay. Did we receive funding for the next round? Has that happened?
Yes, we did receive.
Okay,
we did.
Yeah, and actually that might be thinking about it. We probably should discuss that. We were discussing whether we should release the other funding for meeting attendance. So, because I think, remember Andre, so we paid for meeting attendance up to 3 or 4 weeks. Was that Andre? 4 weeks. 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
Yes.
So
yes.
This is now the 3rd meeting. So we could pay for the next 3 meetings if everyone agrees with that. Or anyone disagrees with that.
I'm always happy to get money.
You're always happy to get money, yeah.
Okay.
But will you attend the meeting? This is the question. Okay, so we're kind of agreed to pay for the next 3 meetings. Okay, that's and we'll sort that out tomorrow, Andre. Yeah?
Okay, that's good.
That's one cost. And if we can move on to the town hall slides. Want to give a quick update, Allison?
Yeah, so I gave the slides last night and was trying to, I know there's just been so much community discussion about decentralized governance. I was trying to set the right tone and talk about both the principles and the immediate actions and our ongoing scope discussions. Yeah, so I think that's my update. As always, any feedback is welcome.
Well, I think you did an amazing job. So,
oh, thanks.
Great summary and well presented, clear. I mean, clear from my point of view as a person who's involved. Maybe not entirely clear to the community as a whole, but I think even just knowing that something like this exists and is in progress is a clarifying point.
Yeah, and Phil, I don't disagree. I'm struggling with how to make it more clear to the community, and I think partly because I'm still working out in my own mind how to define what it is that we're doing here. But I welcome any suggestions about how to provide better clarity.
Yeah, I think the feedback from some of the comments is positive. I mean, in our discussions, Alison, I suppose the overall thing is communicating what we're doing. And I suppose the main things that we've been approaching that is to give an update on what we're doing, which is just beginning, and then secondly, what our kind of philosophy is, I suppose, and also an update on what any major announcements on governance processes that we've seen. That's been so far. Vanessa, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I thought it was great, Alison. I thought what you did was brilliant. But the question that I hear most often from people is, who is this group? How did they come together? So I think maybe just keeping on repeating that it's a funded proposal and that's how it happened might be useful for people. That's the only feedback I have. Apart from that, I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point. So the funded proposal part is clear. As far as how we all came together, how would you phrase that? I guess we all volunteered.
Yeah.
Probably invite and volunteered, I think, would probably be the way to do it. Just because there's, like, we're a broad spectrum of different focused people on different areas of the community. So I guess even sort of handpicked us in a way, or at least offered it to us. So a mixture of volunteering and invite.
And volunteering and voluntolding.
I just ordered people to come. That's what's happening.
Yeah, volunteer.
Okay, yeah, that works though. And but anyway, no, that's not for the record. That's not true. Actually, I politely asked, and people politely responded. But most people's names were on the proposal, and if not, there was, in terms of legitimacy, there's. We budgeted for people from the community to come and work on that proposal, and it was voted for. But maybe we should do a better job of communicating that, how we came together.
Yeah, and actually, maybe where the whole idea started. That's a really good point, because is it correct that this came out of the Catalyst parameters pilot that Harris presented? And I think during the Circle V2, we all discussed the fact that QA DAO was already doing some of the governance oversight work that seemed to be depicted in his pilot. And so from that, you and Dor worked to put together the proposal for the Community Governance Oversight Group. Is that accurate?
The actual facts are the proposal was originally drafted by Dor and Harris. And then they would look for, well, a framework or a suggestion for a proposal was suggested. And then they looked for someone on Circle to take ownership of this. Is a Circle version 2. And I took ownership of that and worked with Dor on drafting the proposal. Yeah. So it was but then that, it was a joint effort between IOG and Catalyst Circle version 2. But we should probably move on because we're 20 too much on. But just briefly, because the issue did come up of being charging, because I realised that we're not paying Allison to do this. So if everyone agrees that we should take some charge from the budget for Allison doing the slideshow, if everyone agrees with that, and maybe we can discuss offline how much that should be, rather than go into a big discussion about it here, because we're eating into time already. Is that all right, everyone?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think with votes in these types of situation, I think it's better to open the floor to negative opinion rather than asking for positive. So if anyone objects to something, it's an easier way to do the vote.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely. Okay, so objection. Does anyone object? No objections, so we'll carry that. So no objections. That's a good idea, Phil. Thanks for that. The same could apply for me, but there is project management, but there isn't really enough budget, so I'm just going to have to not be paid. So until the next time. But if anyone objects, but just move on. Okay, the Fund 8 proposal is in there to hold for further updates. There's no current further updates. The Fund 8 proposal is in the VCA stage. We'll see how it goes through and how it's voted for. We have begun the process to recruit a secretary. Livia Corsini, hello Livia, is going to look at this recording and summarize it. She's currently otherwise engaged at the moment, but we'll do that and encourage, hopefully that will work out well, and we'll see how that goes. And if we can move on to the main part of the meeting now, which is our scope and deliverables. and I'll go to it bit by bit. So the first part is the challenge setting deliverables. I haven't really done much on this apart from attending the challenge round table. I think you were there as well, Phil, weren't you? And I think Tivo might have been there as well. But the really just sort of see where things were going. I've started to document that, but I'm still not clear how I can survey challenge settings overall. So if anyone would like to quickly comment on that.
I don't know if anyone was in the Rose session after his presentation in Town Hall yesterday, but Teva was there. He's essentially built an Ideascale replacement plus a whole lot of other associated pieces, and I feel that the part of the challenge setting issues, and maybe this is not quite the form, but part of the challenge setting issues is the Ideascale platform and the timings of how that operates. And so it's like a platform limitation. So in some ways, there could be changes to the process coming in soon, maybe, hopefully.
I suppose what I'm speaking to is from an oversight perspective. What should we be reporting on? What should we be surveying at the very high level, Phil? So, Allison.
Yeah, I guess I'm saying that people are just putting in proposals like any other normal proposal, whereas challenge setting is meant to include the insight sharing stage, which is kind of underrepresented in the current process. And I believe that we can. It was something that I was going to start addressing in a future fund, but I don't think I need to, given that Row is now a platform that might be able to handle it. So those challenge settings need more communication between the person proposing and the community to craft a better crafted challenge. And I mean, in relation to some of the work I'm doing for the school, I started looking at what the insight sharing stage was actually all about. And that's actually about engaging with the challenge setting proposals. So yeah, I'm not quite sure where I'm going with this.
Yeah, okay. We can just stop you then and move on.
Yeah, go on then.
To Allison. So,
Yeah, just a quick question. Is anyone here familiar with what George Lovegrove is doing around the challenge setting work?
No. Yes.
Yeah, just I think there's some kind of connection there, either in terms of surveying or at least from an oversight perspective, reporting on what he's doing.
Yeah, I'll talk to George actually, and maybe if you could get a feedback to Row, Phil, with Ideascale on what we're doing here, and maybe he can come along and speak to us about this, and give some ideas. But really, what we're after, we're not trying to replace anyone else's work like George's or Row's. We really just want a very high level view on what is the community doing about this, how are we engaging with these at a high level, do we need to do any, where would we do our surveys on that?
There was an interesting sorry, go ahead.
For George, my understanding is that he's looking to consolidate various challenges into bigger challenge setting buckets. Probably an oversimplification, but this is the one takeaway that I got from his work.
Right.
And the intention behind is that now proposals within individual challenges would not have to compete. It's more essentially now you have more. I mean, the flip side is you have more proposals competing for the funds within one bigger challenge. That's my understanding.
I think he was looking to set categories that would be ongoing across funds, so that there would be consistency across funds, and the idea would be making those categories broad enough that they would fit the majority of proposals. I
That's what I understood too.
I had a talk to him though when he asked me to come to the vote, and he didn't present all percentage options. He started at 60 and went to 100%. And I said,
Okay.
without a dissenting vote and without either having the option of 0 to 100 or some other way of having a dissenting vote, I told him the vote isn't really a valid vote.
Okay, if we can not get into too much detail on that, but there's obviously going to be concerns. But two things we need to do is to find out what the community is doing. So that's Ro and George so far that we've been talking about, and then also to see how can we report on that and how can we help with surveying that and also feeding back to IOG on that. Moving on to the next one, it's roughly 10 minutes for each of these, but I just want to make enough time for each deliverable. The next one is the Captain Circle problem sensing. The progress we've made on this, the scope of this is the effectiveness of the prioritized problem sensing. And by coincidence, actually, Catalyst Circle version 3 has actually raised this as a problem themselves, following a conversation we had, a meeting I had with them in some training last week on how to move things across the problems board. And really now we're setting up a working party between Community Governance Oversight and Catalyst Circle version 3 to work on improving the problems process. And it's really just asking who here would like to get involved with that. On the Circle side, it's going to be, well, hopefully it's going to be Nadia and Joey. And on our side so far, it's me and Allison. And I also invited Kenric. I'm not sure if you're available for that, Kenric.
I don't think I can do that,
Okay.
but I appreciate the invitation.
Sure. But if anyone here is interested in participating in that,
yeah, I am.
you are. Okay. Thanks, Tebow. Okay, I think that's been quite good because, well, a document started. I've provided a link here to the document, which is going to, basically the idea is to refine the process, particularly in relation to the Voltaire principles of accessibility and plain language. So the community can understand the process better, and so that the big feedback is that no one understands what's going on, how problems move across the board. Unless there's any other comments on that, because that's really, I can move on. Great. Okay, if we move on to the next deliverable, which is dReps. I've left your stuff in here from last week, Kenric, and added
Yeah,
so
very good. And if I can, I'd like to share my screen. Let's see, it's still not letting me. It says host disabled participant screen share.
Let me try that.
It's not critical, but it'd be nice to share.
Okay, you are now host.
Okay, all right, so I'll continue. And
I think you need to stop yours, Stephen, maybe.
Okay.
okay, so can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
And that's just a meeting, but what I want to do is bring up, so all right, so this, I just wanted to give a quick introduction to what Zotero is for those that aren't familiar with it. This is a tool for bibliographies, and I've imported approximately 40 articles on various aspects of governance. And then I've broken it down into categories of blockchain governance, centralized plutocracy, corporate governance, and liquid democracy. And I welcome anyone's participation. Just send me an email and I'll add you to this group. There's about, I think I've sent out about 5 to 8 invitations thus far, and a couple people have accepted that. So then just what you can do with it. So for instance, I'm currently reading through and studying an article called Power in Liquid Democracy. And the point here is that power in voting systems isn't as simple as just what's your weighted vote. It's actually, well, I won't go into the details of that, but the point is there's a lot of literature on this. you can highlight important parts of the article. You can write notes about that annotation. And then everyone sees and shares these notes. And then finally, once we start writing some white papers, you can use this as a reference tool. It stores the reference and you can add it to, for instance, Google Docs will integrate with this. The other thing, just in case people aren't familiar with this, I strongly recommend, if you've never used it before, Google Scholar. This is a specialized search engine within the Google suite that returns published articles. So for instance, in the reading today, I came across this article and I can put it in Google Scholar, and then it brings up a whole collection of articles, including the one I was looking for right here. And then I can import all of these. I won't do it now, but on the right, there's a little tool here. I just press that button and it'll let me import all of these articles into Zotero. So it's kind of a nice way to do literature reviews. And then just a couple, I can stop sharing. And then just a couple of other updates. I met with Jack, and his last name is not coming to me right now, but he is a new member of the IOG team responsible for the product marketing for Voltaire. He helped me with the presentation I put together, and also big thanks to the Catalyst Swarm team and the Catalyst School for providing the template that I used yesterday for a lecture. Okay, and I'm gonna pass the host back to, let me just finish my comment. and
Yeah,
then I'll do
Karen,
that.
it's fine. It's fine.
The other thing that was interesting in last week's after town hall, the Wolfram Mathematica group presented their work. I guess they're funded now to provide computational tools for monitoring governance within the Catalyst program. So I think that's really exciting. Mathematica is a really exceptional tool. So I am meeting with them, I think later today, actually, and to talk more about their tool development and how we can make use of it.
I saw that they did some AI analysis of Fund 8, didn't they? I saw that somewhere. I haven't really.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was Jack Briggs, I think, Kenric.
Jack Briggs, yes. Thank you.
He's, and also to be clear on the deliverables for this, the deliverables, I mean, just to be clarified for everyone here, a literature review of liquid democracy and issues related to dReps, particularly possibly with a focus on measurable definitions. Is that what you say, Kenric?
Yes, that's right. And then that way, and then I think as far as like surveys with people in the community, that the point of the literature review is to be more informed for conversations with the IOG research team. And that will be this kind of also contribute to this survey deliverable.
Yeah,
that's the way I'm seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, on that point, we've just had IOG have just published a response to the community on dReps. If you could pass the screen back to me as well, Kenric, I'm not sure I can show it.
How do I do that actually?
You go to the little dots on the side of my picture, I think.
Okay.
And you should be there somewhere, like make host, I think
Okay.
it is. But yeah, I'm not sure if anyone's seen that. Was it posted at Town Hall? I'm not sure. But
I've read through it, yeah.
Yeah, I read it too.
And maybe we can have a little discussion about that. Maybe we should be pretty prepared for that, so we could carry it over to the next meeting as well to see, was this response, what did you think of that response? I'm just trying to find to link it in. Is there any immediate thoughts on that? Here it is.
I thought it was very
fine.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
I was
Go
just going to
ahead,
say it was fine, but it didn't really commit them to anything. They kind of said vaguely that, yeah, they're going to have some meetings and they support it. that we sent the letter, but it's not very definite, is it?
Yeah, that was exactly my response. Positive in tone, very enthusiastic and affirming, and lacking in detail or actionable next steps.
Okay. I mean, yeah. So again, it's just I'll obviously link into this. I'll be documenting what's happening with dReps from IOG, Kenric, and I was going to maybe talk off meeting about how we can document what you're doing with the Zotero and all that, how we can bring that across to our own documentation and how that works. Maybe we can take that out of the meeting so that we have
Well,
a place. We have a place. Yeah, go on.
Well, I was glad that the community wrote a letter. I thought their own letter was somewhat vague too, and maybe that's kind of part of the point, is that there's a lot of difficult issues around designing a good governance system. And I'm hoping that this work will help to A, educate the community on the issues, and B, invite the community to participate on being both more knowledgeable about the issues and contributing to making sure we have a good design.
Right. I mean, we are pursuing the literature review with an objective to look at measurable definitions, but what might happen, because Harris, it's a bit vague as usual, but there is strong hints that they are, like Danny has also tweeted out, that they're going to release something soon, in the next week or two, I imagine. Presumably that will address some metrics of this, some means of measuring this. So that may provide us with information as well, Kenric,
Yeah, well, and in fact, the most sort of the news item in that letter is that they're planning to have the dReps operational for Fund 9.
Right.
So they've got to start, if that's true, they've got to release something very soon.
And in that case, if that happens, we also have another deliverable, which would be to, because the scope of what we do, because we didn't know that was going to happen, because we were suspecting that dReps were on hold, and that's why we went with the survey, with the literature review deliverable. But if they start implementing it, we'll also have to look at the process as well. I'm not sure what people think about that. So, yeah. Vanessa.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I read the letter, but I don't remember it mentioning, they said that they're going to go ahead with dReps as a pilot, and they were kind of emphasizing it much more strongly that it's a pilot. Is it still going to be 150 dReps, or did they mention that it was going to be fewer? I'm just
I
not
saw
sure.
somewhere that was going to be 100. I don't know why I saw. I think it was one of Danny's tweets, but I might.
Yeah, I thought I'd seen that too, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, but again, that's maybe hearsay. I thought I saw that. Phil, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I'm wondering. So we've got a pretty clear deliverable from what Kenric's doing.
Yeah.
But we've mentioned a few other things that we're looking to do, but with no clear deliverable of what the outcome will actually look like. So what if we are going to analyze this and report back on this, what does that report look like?
That's going to be dependent. We had a vague deliverable, which I'm just highlighting here, which was keeping track and documenting the ongoing community engagement, which is basically documenting what's happening up there. But
I guess I'm also talking about the other thing about the categories in the challenges. Like we mentioned that we might need to look into that, but we didn't work out what a deliverable of that would look like.
Well, the deliverable, yeah, the deliverable that we inherited from IOG for each governance process is that 3-part approach, Phil.
The survey, yeah.
Yeah, the surveys, the retrospectives, and the report. We're all working towards a report sometime in like late May, June-ish. Maybe we have a little bit of wriggle room on that. Let's say June, roughly. And that's when we're going to bring everything we're doing here together to report on oversight of governance, okay? And then each governance process, because we are having to be a bit creative here about our approach, because what is a survey, what is a retrospective? What do they mean by that? So the ball is in our court, Phil. So that's why I was a bit vague on challenge setting. So the approach, all I can say is that we need to identify what is the major governance issue or governance thing that we're overseeing in challenge setting. That's the question. And then what questions are we going to ask of the community? And also, by the way, IOG, we're also briefed to ask, because it was phrased as internal and external surveys. And an internal survey means we have scope to ask IOG as well on all of these processes, by the way. So so that's it. I know that's not very helpful, but
well, I guess it's the timing. If we're waiting till the end of this our time frame, then we're going to be stuck with missing out on like the stuff that George has done and the stuff that Troy doing is current and relevant now. The response to dRep is relevant now, whereas in a month's time, it's not going to be as relevant. So
no, but I think we can track that. So we can say, okay, this is, I think it's part of, well, I mean, I'd like to hear other people's feedback on this. I think part of what we're doing is telling the story of governance in Catalyst as it goes along. And we're funded up to June-ish, and then hopefully we'll get funded again to carry on after that. Vanessa.
I was just wondering if an internal survey on dReps would include the perspectives of people who've signed up to be a dRep. I just think that might be an interesting angle to include.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's external. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question of definitions, isn't it? I think it's external because it would involve people outside of IOG, if that is the definition that we're settling on. I think that is the definition. Kenric.
Well, what I would say to that is that certainly is of interest. It's not within the scope I'm trying to take on for this section, but what I proposed in Fund 8, and if we get that funding, is to do a fuller white paper on the concepts of liquid democracy. And as I'm sort of using the phrase illiquid plutocracy as a way to define the opposite and then have measurements of that. So I think in that second phase, interviews with the actual dReps and their impressions about the process would be within scope. I'm not sure I'll have time in this session.
Yeah, I think in this session we're kind of adapting deliverables towards essentially a literature review, which is almost like preparing for what we make it funded in Fund 8. And in Fund 8 we have some provision for research, as well as paying for other things like project management. Phil.
I'd like to continue the conversation about what an internal and external survey would be.
Of course.
Because from, can we do this now, or do you want to add it as a...
I think we've got a bit of time because we covered the other governance parameters is kind of dead on this, but we may need to cover governance parameters for about 5 minutes, but we have got quite a lot of time. I can bring up the, I'll try and find the definitions of internal survey on screen, but carry on.
Because I think from IOG's point of view, it's obvious what an internal and external is. An internal is a company-wide internal IO check survey. But from our point of view, I would suggest that maybe the definition is slightly altered, not to look at IOG as the internal, but rather the closeness to the governance point is the internal. So there's like a broader community which can include IO as that point. Yep. But for me, the dReps would be an internal member of that survey, because they're the ones being directly impacted by the discussions, by the governance decisions and that sort of stuff. whereas there's like a broader community that is affected, but it's like a slightly more distance.
I think, funny enough, that's quite close to the original definition, Mark. So I was
Okay.
quite this is drafted by me and Dor. The internal surveys, I didn't really realise this. It's directed at those who organise each governance process. Now, that is IOG, but it's also the people who organise it. So challenge teams, Catalyst Circle, and the Technical Council. So it could also be, presumably, it could also be dReps themselves, presumably.
We can survey ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we can actually. I don't think Oversight can.
Just-
we
I know.
need oversight of oversight, I think. But yeah. So, and
I'm
the
just wearing
external,
a different hat.
yeah,
Put a different hat on, so it's clear it's like I'm
Yeah.
speaking now.
and
Well, better and oversight.
the external surveys sound exactly what you just said, Phil. It just directed at the Catalyst community and their reception of each process. That's I can paste these into the agenda actually. And then
Okay. I mean, yeah, they're pretty similar.
let's do that here. I'll rearrange it later. Yeah, so there's the definitions, and you can check them on the survey, on the agenda. So, but I mean, that's pretty broad. So, like a lot of what we're doing, we're kind of modding the scope a little bit, but if it's in the spirit of that, I think it's fine. Unless there's any objections. Okay, maybe we should move on to because we're getting on to governance parameters, which is a lot of this is from last week, so just ignore this, but essentially it's on hold unless anyone has heard anything else on this. I know, Tivo, you gave some feedback on some of the complications involved in the parameter settings and all that. Is there any further you would like to add to that?
No, I have no new news about that, and haven't really went too deep on the VCA discussions, and yeah, I was in the same room as when Phil pointed out the ADAGA meeting. Marek was there, and so if there is going to be any kind of integration, then I think the parameter changes also have to be somehow considered when platforms are changed.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's I think speculation, and until somebody actually says how we're gonna do stuff, I wouldn't focus on it.
yeah. I mean, just to be clear, our involved, yeah, exactly, because our scope is just to look. It's just to start to look at a process if it begins, and we don't even have. They've just delayed the process. So
I have a different view of this,
Go on.
if I could, because even if it's IOG that's still responsible for the parameters, doing some oversight of that, and I guess it would also obviously depend on someone in our group having a real interest in this and wanting to work on it. But assuming that's the case, I don't think we should put our work on hold just because IOG decided to put delegating this to the circle on hold. Because the parameters still exist. There's still a need for the community to understand those parameters better. And some of them need to change, like I was thinking, like, I'm looking at this power thing with the voting, like, and one of the things that just came to mind is like, we have this weighted vote by wealth, right? And then we're actually paying the wealthy people more for their vote. So if you let that process run over, if that was it, there's obviously a lot more going on, but that process by itself converges to a dictatorship in which one person makes all the decisions.
So what
Now,
you're
that's
referring,
not the intent.
before I get into too much detail on that, sorry, Kenric, but yeah, what you're talking about is specific parameters. Yeah, so maybe we should look at specific parameters like that, for example, and then,
Yeah, so I just think there's a lot of work. I'm only bringing this up as sort of a vivid example to say that there's a lot of work to do on these parameters. And if someone's interested in this, I don't suggest waiting. I suggest, do a survey of how IOG is currently managing it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Tivo.
Yeah, Kenric brings out pretty good example and use case what to kind of look at. But even though that if they say they're on hold, the way I like to look at innovation fund and its parameters is all of the rules we set down. For example, when VCA started before and just few weeks before, we found out that now there is a new rule to be a veteran community advisor. You have to be 3 times previously VCA or 2 recent funds as a CA. And that's, to me, is a rule change, which is also a parameter which we play around as a parameter of like who's going to get in.
That's an interesting issue, Tivo. Is that a parameter change?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
To IoT side, I don't think they consider that, but as for me, I would consider that to be.
That raises the question of what is a parameter change and who decides what is a parameter. Okay. That's interesting. Okay.
And maybe we could turn that around and into the survey that ask people what should be a parameter change. Do we want to go beyond allocations? Do we want to go rules, and let them give an example? That's how we kind of get maybe insight.
Before I get on to Vanessa, would you like to get in? I'm going to ask people to volunteer for this now. Okay. So Tivo, would you be interested in working on something, or some aspect of that?
Okay.
And maybe we can think about.
If I'm not alone, because I heard 2 weeks or like 2 meetings ago that there was more people than me who are interested to do the survey.
I'm interested as well. So I'll put my hat in as well. We can talk about that more offline or in another meeting. Vanessa.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Tivo that is in effect a parameter change with the change to who can be a VCA. And I also quite strongly agree with what Kenric said, that just because the parameters pilot isn't going ahead as planned, it doesn't mean that there's nothing for us to oversee. I noticed quite a lot in particularly in the CA's Telegram channel at the moment. There's a lot of discussion about voting and how that works. And I just wonder, should we be kind of, I don't know what the word is, not exactly monitoring, but maybe documenting what the community has to say about those issues as a way of doing an external survey rather than sending out another Google form? Right. Should we kind of be in there going, oh, you know, if you have something to say on this, can you contribute to something on a Gitbook or somewhere, so that we capture, because, you know, Telegram, things just disappear, don't they? And it would just be quite interesting to collate community views.
Would you be interested in doing that, Vanessa?
Yeah,
yeah. Okay. Because I'm reaching the limit of my resource. Yeah. Okay, because that's Telegram. My God. Okay, a lot going on there. And that's not just because I'm reaching the limit of my familiarity, but there are discussions around parameter change related discussions, presumably particularly in the CA and the VCA process. Allison.
Yeah, so first, this isn't what I initially wanted to say, but I think Vanessa's idea is spot on. I think there's a huge amount of discussion in this CA channel around the democratic process, and people have excellent ideas, and documenting it, I think, could be extremely valuable. I am not volunteering. I think that Vanessa has an incredible skill set for that that activity, because I don't know where to begin, and I don't think it's, I think if Vanessa can do it, that would be absolutely amazing. What I actually wanted to say was going back to the idea of who decides on parameter changes. So first, a point of clarification and then a question. When you have written up above who decides, is the question who decides what is considered a parameter change, or is the question, who makes the change?
I
And
meant,
for that,
yeah, I meant what is. So I who decides what is, but because who at the moment who decides the parameter change is IOG, isn't it?
so that's what I wanted to clarify. For the VCA change, was that IOG's unilateral decision?
Well, that's a good question. I think you would have to ask IOG, and I think that's what I suppose I should need to work with you, Tivo, on, yeah, and Vanessa as well, if we're working together on this.
Well, I can give an answer if
Yeah, go on.
you want that, at least, as the CA rep for the last circle, they did take quite a bit of input from the community. So the community was involved, and they're also using that Dropbox, to solicit input from the community. But then ultimately it's the IOG design team that sort of takes that input, puts forward a change. And then I think they did have at least somewhat of a process of getting feedback from the community too. So it's not as though they're doing this in isolation. But it is IOG that's actually implementing and deciding on the changes.
Yeah, before
Can I
go,
just,
it's good. Yeah, if I could just quickly go to Matthias because we helped him, then I'll go to you, Allison. So
Can we do Allison because she
okay,
has to leave soon?
go on. Sorry, so I'm just trying. Allison, sorry.
I do have to leave. Thank you, Matthias. My
All right,
son
sorry,
will
yeah,
thank you. But
yeah.
just quickly, I wanted to follow up on Kenric's point about the iterative Dropbox and IOG taking input. And I truly don't know this, but I was following along, Kenric, because of the project we're working on, what was going on in the iterative Dropbox and some of the CA feedback. And I was caught completely by surprise by the VCA eligibility change. And so I think we've all agreed that VCAs and CA processes are out of scope here, but as a kind of thing that it would be good to document, I think it would be interesting to know how that decision was made. If there was
That's a good
community input, it would be useful for us to document it and make it clear. And if there wasn't, perhaps then we document that as well. Now, maybe the VCA decision isn't the right parameter because that's not exactly in our scope, but
Well,
yeah.
I mean, we could frame it as it's a decision taken by IOG on a governance parameter, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
And that's how we should frame it, because that's what we're not. And I agree, we need to keep away from the specifics of VCA-CA discussion, because that's very much in the remit of Nadia and all the subcircles and everything else.
I think it's a valid discussion about how the process went and how the communication happened.
Right.
Because I wasn't following the Telegram either at that time, but it was announced that Danny put it on the Telegram. But if we don't, I think the survey question there would be, is the communication channel clear for like feedback, community feedback? Because I don't think it is. If it's just popped in the various flows of Telegram, they're lost in the flow.
Right.
So that's probably the survey question that needs to be asked. What more can we do, and is it sufficient? So is it sufficient? What more can we do?
Okay. I think we can, again, there probably needs to be some liaison here with Nadia and others to know that we're not taking over any of their, to define what we're doing in relation to this as a parameter change. Matthias.
Yeah, so I think it's actually a good point to bring this up, the work that has been or is in process of for a catalyst constitution, right? I know there's been after town hall sessions, which unfortunately I was not able to attend, but Gimba Labs also has now a working group. I think also Joe worked on this idea. And the reason I bring this up is that the one thing for me that was being said in the letter in the response to the community letter on dReps was the quote that I posted in the chat a while ago. The solutions presented in your letter aligned with IOG's plans. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but again, the community advisors role, the community advisors community is probably the strongest community in terms of efficiency and bringing up solutions to issues of governance. It baffles me that, you know, that even that group seemingly is not really taking into, I mean, they're taking into account, but you know, the problem really is like, okay, well, how is the input being consumed? Because ultimately it ends up at IOG behind closed doors, there's a decision, right? And it's like, okay, well, thanks for your contribution, but this is what we've decided. And so I think the idea of a catalyst constitution might be also at least aligned to some degrees with our group, and maybe we need to bring that in at some point.
Potentially you could relate a constitution to parameter changes per se, the process.
Yeah,
I would say that that's not our role. Oversight is not. Oversight cannot define things. So
right, not the constitution, but
yeah,
in terms of clarity, who decides what. And
yeah, I mean, it's good to know. I wasn't aware of that, so we should be documenting. We should be documenting as much governance stuff that goes on. I'll say that to everyone here as well. If you find out about stuff that's going on, let us know so we can try and document that, and we can then see if they have any blockage. I suppose also what you're saying is that kind of, do IOG only accept solutions that align with IOG? I suppose that's the nutshell.
Yeah,
Phil.
Yes, you mentioned before about making sure that we're not stepping on people's toes. I think that's the best way to run the surveys, in consultation with whoever is, if there is a voted representative in the circle, then in consultation with them to implement, to discuss drafting and to put forward to the community. So I think that that's a good way to ensure broader participation outside of this group. We can spend the effort to do the drafting, but then, yeah, for sure, participatory is going to be a better option.
Yeah, that's great. Vanessa.
Yeah, just really quickly, I'm really wary of mission creep, or whatever you want to call it, but today Circle are having a discussion about a code of conduct for Circle, and I just wonder if that's something that this group should be overseeing or having some documenting of. I mean, I'll be documenting it anyway for QA DAO, but maybe not now, but maybe in the next meeting we should be looking at it. I don't know. Because it feels like it's a governance process.
It would probably come under, it could be related to, because it is a prioritized problem. It does relate to the, well, as it's self-referential. So in that sense, but I think our only scope will be to see how it's working, how not, I would say we shouldn't interfere in how it's been defined, but I'd be interested to see.
Oh no, absolutely not. We shouldn't. Yeah.
But we should see, okay, they've defined it, they defined a governance process, how are they running it, and then to survey them on how they're running it, and then what the community thinks of that, and has it worked? I suppose that's the questions we can ask. Matthias. And then we have to move on a bit. But,
yeah, I'm a little bit worried about this discussion, right? And that's not a critique to our current circle reps, but I mean, the community broadening, there was a decision that the community or specific community members would do one thing in terms of conduct portrayed, and you know, to involve the community in how to, I guess, police the breach of a code of conduct in the first place. And I've seen indications that none of this is being taken into account, and I'm very worried that IOG or whoever presents a solution that is not in alignment with what has been previously proposed. Just that.
Well, is that kind of a conflict? Is that kind of a conflict of interest, or?
Potentially.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe it's an offline discussion.
Yeah,
but,
that's an offline. I
want-
mean, we need to see. This needs more consideration. Let's put it that way. But it's certainly something we can keep an eye on. You know, and I have to close that because we're getting towards the end now, and I'll just quickly run through. This is a placeholder for Fund 7 proposal reporting. It's going to happen in another. We'll hold it over to the next meeting because it's not relevant for this meeting. This is something we could hold over to another meeting as well to address this ongoing issue of how we communicate in different language communities. If anyone has anything for that for the next meeting or offline, then if they'd like to, discuss that on our Discord. I haven't had time today to go over the project boards, but I'm starting to track quickly here. This is what that looks like. Everything we're doing and ADA costs against each of our deliverables. And I'm starting at a high level for challenge setting dReps and governance parameters as deliverables. And this will go in progress and then done. That's why I've sent GitHub invites to Kenric, Allison, and Phil, I think it was, who it hasn't had. So you'll be allocated here to your deliverable, and then that'll be tracked.
Okay.
Won't go, but if anyone has any questions about that, we can take that offline as well. Oh, by the way, yes, important. Danny's asked for me to ask you for at the end of each meeting to do a summary of what we discussed today, for a paragraph to go into the weekly newsletter, again, we don't have to do that right now. We could do that in Discord, but if you can quickly think of, like today, what was the most important thing we discussed? What would it be good to put in the weekly newsletter that goes out on Friday? And if you could type that in our Discord, we'd appreciate that.
Which channel do you want to use for that?
Could put it into oversight discussion, Kenric, I think, for the time being. Yeah. But it's something that we'll have to do at every meeting, and it's a kind of one of our communication things, like the town hall slides. Yeah. So, and we've kind of got two or 3 minutes left. The next meeting, I think, will be. It will be at 1500 UTC, won't it? Yeah, it will be. Yeah. So I'll change that to 1500 UTC on the 21st of April. And if there's any feedback or further comments. Okay. Okay, I'll just thank you everyone for turning up, and great meeting. And thank you, Livia. I hope we can understand what we're all talking about. And I'll just
thank you very much.
Just stop the recording now.